Hello and welcome to episode 59 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Dalton.
Welcome back, chaps. Chris, you started telling us about breaking open a proprietary item using free and open source software, and then Dalton chimed in, so I thought, right, let's talk about this on air. So Dalton, you go first, and then we'll hear about Chris's thing that sparked this conversation.
I've talked about breaking open game consoles before, but that's not it. Not in this case. I was actually talking with someone just a couple of weeks ago about e-readers. They have a Amazon Kindle e-reader, and they want it to be something that it isn't. They want to keep their documents on it, but in order to do that, you kind of need to email things over to it or convert them into the proprietary format, and it's just a huge faff to get a Kindle to do what you want. However, there is another brand on the market, not sponsored, that is better about it and is actually easily rootable. And those are the Kobo readers. So I kind of nudge them in that direction because with the reader, you can just take it and hook it up to Calibre and put your books on it. And that's it. That's the whole experience. That is the experience front to back. And that's how everything should be. And it isn't. And that's the problem.
Can't you do that with a Kindle these days?
It's not as easy, and additionally, Amazon likes to reach into Kindles and mess with them from time to time. At least that was their complaint about it.
Yeah, so there is a pop-up that comes up when you use Calibre now on certain Kindles that warns you that the cover art won't come up anymore unless you do a bit of a jiggery dance, basically. So it does work, but you always worry, especially with someone like Amazon, that the hand of Jeff is waving over the whole process and someone will present him with it. The invisible hand of Jeff. And then suddenly one day you'll plug it into Calibre and they've completely changed it all. And I would agree with Dalton. I think you're on safer footing with Kobo where they know it's happening and they seem to actually actively encourage that kind of thing, or at least they're not upset by it, I think.
Well, that's why my wife is still using an old Nook. It was dirt cheap. They were blowing them out at, I think, 25, 35 quid or something like that years ago. And she's still using it because she just plugs it into the laptop, just mounts as mass storage, copies the books on there. Mostly she gets the books from Project Gutenberg, just like old classics, like Thomas Hardy books and stuff. And just doesn't need any third-party software at all. But that thing is falling to bits, literally. And I cleaned it the other day and it didn't like it. All the rubber just went all sticky and stuff. So I fear we're going to have to buy something new soon.
Another nice thing that can be done with them is you don't even need to log into them to get them running. There's some software that will do that all for you on Windows where you can, without connecting the reader to Wi-Fi, sign in and everything. But if you're a Linux user, or at least a little bit smart with the command line at all, you can open the SQLite database that pops up on the mass storage and just add the username value, and it's like, oh, okay, you're signed in, I guess, and you're done.
Nice.
So never need to touch the internet at all with them, and that is really nice.
So you reckon Kobo for the win then? Because my wife just will not have a Kindle. She hates Amazon.
Well, I wasn't expecting to make a sale today, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I did post about this, it must be a couple of months ago. And I got a lot of suggestions, and Kobo did come up quite a lot.
I do miss that thing you say, Joe, as well, of just being able to dump files onto a raw file system. Before I had an iPod, I really liked those chewing gum form factor MP3 players that you would just plug in and do that. And it was just so easy. And the little firmware would just pick up on the directory structure. And yeah, you'd have to name it slightly and it wouldn't have ID3 tags and everything. But it was so simple and so freeing to have that. And obviously things have moved on with Spotify, but to be able to do that with ebooks, yeah, just to have a mass storage device and you drop it on and then it goes, yes, now you're navigating through a directory structure that you're familiar with and just opening the thing.
Speak for yourself about the Spotify stuff. I just use my phone and copy all my music on and just use VLC.
You just gave me a horrible flashback, Chris, of about 15 years ago when I was using an iPod and first discovering Linux, of plugging my iPod into an Ubuntu machine and it being completely obliterated and all of my music disappearing off of it. And at the time, actually, that was the thing that kept me on Windows, was iTunes, because I was never going to plug my iPod into a Linux machine again for love nor money. And I lost that 80 gigs of music.
There are actually some things libi mobile device makes it possible to do things like back up an iPhone on Linux. Unfortunately, it hasn't been released in a while, but there are still commits to it that are fixing things. So if you build it yourself, you can use it for those things. It also helps a lot when you need to DFU a phone and you don't have a Mac around. Joe.
When you don't just go and buy one off Gumtree for 100 quid. I thought I'd bricked it, man. I was not about to take any chances. And it was only 5 minutes away. And I'm like, right, well, 100 quid, well.
iBoot is actually really resilient.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had that kind of blind panic that we talked about.
Yeah.
And it is actually really great that, I think it's a 2012 or no, 2015 maybe. It's just gone out of support anyway. The Mac Mini runs Ubuntu like a champ, apart from the network card, which needs a driver, I think, the Wi-Fi card. But other than that, it works brilliantly and it's quiet and cool. And if you're only running at 1080p, it's brilliant.
Great machine to stick under the TV.
Unless you've got a 4K TV, and then it really struggles with it.
Well, yeah, but I blame Ubuntu.
I don't think it even outputs at 4K. Or maybe it'll do 4K 30, but not 4K 60. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably 4K 30. It's probably not a recent enough version of HDMI.
Yeah, exactly. So, Chris, what was this thing for one of your kids that sparked this conversation then?
Yeah, so when I was in France, my wife's cousin's children, two girls, had a story box basically called a Luni, which is Luni. So it's quite a funny name, and it's seemingly quite popular in France. It looks a bit like one of those pure DAB radios, but very bright blue with a yellow volume knob and a navigation thing. But when you turn it on, it's like an interactive story box. So there's a very small screen that brings up an image, and it basically says, and we got the French one for my daughter as well because she speaks French, it gives you an option. You can scroll through options. And it's a bit like when I was a kid, you get to the end of a chapter and roll a dice or make a choice and go to another chapter. So it's a bit like a digital version of that. It's very nice, but they have a proprietary store that goes alongside it, and you can download other interactive adventures, which is fine. But I browsed the website and there's a reasonable number, but it's not particularly extensive. And I thought, surely inside here is something like a Raspberry Pi or some kind of known board or chip, and someone's had a go at hacking it. And of course, they had when I looked it up.
Yeah, you go on YouTube and type in Luni, it suggests Luni hack as the first possible search term.
There's a couple of YouTube videos in French as well. And yeah, there's a Hackaday journal of the insides. Someone cracked one open. And then I found a GitHub repository. And, Modern Vintage Gamer, his catchphrase is mistakes were made. And I always enjoy that with his videos. He sort of talks about how an emulator's come about or how some kind of console has been broken open. So this GitHub repository I found was similar. Basically, they've left JTAG on the PCB. They haven't ciphered the external flash, so you can dump it. There's UART, so you can get debugging. The firmware embeds debugging strings, so you can decompile it. And everything is validated through dumb CRC. It's not hashed. So, look, it's not something you use for your online banking. It's a storyteller box for kids. So they're not going to put loads of preventative measures in.
Why did they put any? It's my question.
Honestly, I don't know the background of how this device came about. There is a video from quite a few years ago at CES where they were promoting it. But all of this combined for very entrepreneuring people to reverse engineer how the actual stories are put together. And there's this fantastic piece of software, which is called Studio Storyteller Unleashed. And it's like a whole IDE for these stories. It's written in Java, and you can string together your own interactive stories. It looks a little bit like Scratch or Node, Node-RED, I should say. And yeah, you have a cover node, a menu node, story node, stage node, and action node. And you can string together your own interactive stories. Then I found that there's a Discord in France, and I'm still waiting to be approved membership for this. So if anyone in French is listening that happens to know, they're uploading legal public domain audio content that has been converted into these formats. And that was why I was really intrigued by it, because of course, you can crack open this device and you can put proprietary stolen things you could get from the high seas onto it if you wanted to. But that's not really the way that it's gone. People are also creating original content, interactive stories for adults and escape rooms and all sorts of stuff that you can put on this device. It's about 50 quid. I think we got it as a gift, as I say. But it was quite heartening to find that thing, you know, when you buy a new toy and you think, oh, this is quite cool, but surely we can do more with it. And find this whole tranche of, yes, you can. Not only can you crack open the firmware, you can actually create your own content and share that content with other people that own the device.
It's funny you described it as looking like a DAB radio. To me, it looks like a giant guitar pedal, like maybe a phaser pedal or something.
Yeah, there is a bit of that about it as well. Yeah.
But on its side for some reason.
Mm.
That reminds me not of another hardware product, but of a different software, a game, Trombone Champ. Yeah, that's a real game. Is a game that shipped last year and made a little bit of a splash because it's absolutely ridiculous. You move your mouse and press buttons to play a trombone. And if you do it in time with the music, you get more points.
Can you go with it?
Yep.
Yeah, I have to admit, it made me laugh to tears at some of the videos which I watched when it first came out. It's very entertaining.
And basically a month after it came out, someone found out, oh, hey, a Unity mod loader just works with this. We can load whatever we want. And for a little while, there was just, random YouTube videos that you'd go on and they'd have a Google Drive link below them and you'd download the music that you could load in through this mod called Tromp Loader. And then it became a Discord server where there's hundreds and hundreds of custom songs that you can load up and play in Trombone Champ. And it's got online leaderboards now that were modded in, and difficulty modifiers, and so many things that this proprietary piece of software just got grafted onto it, and now it's a competitive-ish rhythm game. I
want you, Dalton, to try and work out how to get that Eurovision sax loop, which Joe always trolls me with, into trombone format, because I think that would be the hardest. A short phrase that you have to repeat and try and get the pitch right again and again would actually be probably quite hard to get the accuracy on and would be quite funny to hear.
I have good news for you.
Right?
Epic Sax Guy is already charted for Trombone Champ.
Right, that's it.
Nice.
I need to see a video of this because
I can play it for you. I'll show you later.
Do you remember that clip that I sent you of the guy on the scooter?
Yes.
Coming around the corner and you hear what sounds a bit like the revving of an engine, but actually he's killed the engine and the guy in the back is making the sound of revving with a trombone. There is just something about a trombone which is eminently hilarious.
That has also been charted for playing in Trombone Champ, that video.
Absolutely unbelievable. But this is what I love, you see. This is why it inspired me so much, because yeah, you can crack open devices to then basically not have to buy stuff from the online stores. That's one level. But it's when you get a Discord community that is generating this original content or things that they're not going to find that YouTube video and sell you like an add-on pack for that content. It's just fun and funny. And invariably you find FOSS tools to enable you to do that. So that's why it's nice that that's still going on with devices and software that is about now, despite generally the trend for there to be tied to DRM. In the face of all of that, it's nice to still have things that you can crack completely open and have chariots of fire on the trombone that you play with your mouse.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Linux After Dark is part of the Late Night Linux family, which means that for $10 a month on Patreon, you can get access to an RSS feed that contains all the Late Night Linux family shows without adverts like this. There's also an option to get just this show ad-free for $5 a month. Some of the episodes are even released a day or so early for Patreon supporters. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us at linuxafterdark.net/support. Let's do some feedback then. So Scout says, I have a challenge for you all. I propose whatever distro you like on whatever hardware you like. The challenge is to use the accessibility features such as the Orca screen reader for doing 1 day or up to 1 week's work in Linux. Not necessarily your paying jobs, but any other tasks, from document writing, email, web surfing, etc. If you cannot manage one whole day not using Orca or other accessibility tools, I would love to hear your comments. The only exception on distros is no KDE. Why? There is no accessibility at all that I'm aware of in KDE. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm a low vision user and I'm writing this in Ubuntu Mate on Firefox. This I thought we should discuss on air because this is a thorny issue.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically because we have a lot of blind and low vision listeners, because podcasts obviously are quite popular among people who don't have full vision. But I just don't know how we could do this sensitively.
Yes, that is the main concern. We don't want to come across in any way like we're belittling any issues, or we're not taking them seriously, or we're using it as a gimmick to hang a show on. It's an incredibly serious issue. I used to work in a call center with a very fond friend of mine who was a low vision user as well, just like Sir Scout. And we had various accessibility improvements for her specific desk. And so it was really important. And when anything went wrong, me being me, I would try to help get them up and running when something that would enable her to do her job would start to go wrong. And I could, like that app that Popey's mentioned before, Find My Eyes, I tried to be that person and say, oh, what I can see is this, and maybe that is what's gone wrong, and kind of work with her to get it up and running. But that's my concern. I don't want us to come across in any way as if we're not taking the issue seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we all know that this is a thorny issue in Linux, and for the most part, doesn't work well at all. I suppose there is something interesting in being someone who is outside of that community, who is fully able to do these things, to see what the difference is when you're not, and to have that perspective on the world. It's not something I think that lends itself well to entertainment, but at the same time, it could be extremely informative for both ourselves and for the audience.
Yeah, but where is that line between entertainment and information? I don't know, really. We try and have fun and entertain people, but do we have a responsibility to do stuff like this, at least from time to time? I don't know. Again, it's very difficult to be respectful when you're effectively like cosplaying someone who has accessibility issues. Like it just doesn't feel quite right, does it, in a sense?
Yeah, that's kind of what concerns me. Is I'm not even sure how I would do that kind of testing any justice when I know that at the first sign of trouble I could just grab the mouse and look at the screen and get around it. And the temptation to do that when the tool doesn't work properly would be pretty high. So it's really difficult to even devise a standardized way in which you test that tool across different desktops or different operating systems, I think.
What would be interesting, if anyone is listening who has been through this process, if they contacted us to describe what that process has been like in terms of development, because there is development that goes on, and I'd be interested to hear some kind of testimonial as to what challenges have been faced if you are developing a piece of software with that focus in terms of an area of the community or a specific community. That would be something I'd be interested to hear. So if you're out there listening, then write something in.
Yeah, definitely. show@linuxafterdark.net. I don't think it's really for us to talk about this, is it? It's for us to listen to people and maybe get someone on who has got a decent mic set up and everything, can talk about it, or just maybe we could discuss some emails about it if people want to write in to us. I just, something doesn't feel quite right about doing this to me.
I just don't think we could do it justice. And that's why, as I say, I'd like to hear from someone that's been put in this position and has really had to think about this. What have you done? What communication have you done? How have you tested things? That kind of thing I'd be interested to hear about.
Yeah, I think this is really a case of us listening rather than speaking on this issue. Well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been Dalton.
See you later.